Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. We're excited to have you join us again today. I have Amber McHugh joining us from West Africa. Amber, thanks so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me, Vicky. This is awesome.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. And audience, we're just going to tell you, bear with us. Sometimes there can be connectivity issues, but Amber and I are assured that everything's going to go smoothly here today. So let me first of all thank our audience for being here. We know you chime in from over 50 different countries, so we're super grateful for that, and just thrilled that you continue to share our podcast and let other individuals know of the messages that we're sharing. And today, I want to give you a little bit of insight about Amber, and then we're just going to jump into the conversation. So she has a background in corporate consulting and studied at the John Hopkins Organization Development MBA program, which lends well to her strategic consulting she does with modern CEOs at ambermchugh.com. And through the how to clone yourself experience for entrepreneurs. So I think this is going to be a really important conversation is how do we clone ourselves, right? Many of you listening in today are professional career women, but you may also be a mom, a daughter, a sister, and we know we get pulled in many, many directions. And so we're gonna jump into how do we do that with ease and grace. Putting all things how to clone yourself to work, Amber grew her first business from a side hustle to a multi-million-dollar company that has operated in more than 26 cities across the United States. She purchased her first company, an online education company, in 2022. So we're going to dive in and find out more about Amber and what makes her tick and really what makes her her. So Amber, take us on your journey. Give us some insight as to who you are.
Oh my gosh, Vicky, thank you so much for that intro. And, as I think about the journey that we have been on, and even fast forwarding, I've been reflecting a lot on this right now in this season because I'm going through a season of transitions, as we often do. They come up regularly. And, I'm looking back thinking, I am so grateful I made the decision to shift my career, over 15 years ago to run my own businesses because it's allowed me to live a completely different life than the track I was originally on in corporate consulting. And so as I look back, it was a series of decisions from, deciding to even change jobs at one point that prompted me to, okay, get that MBA, to have more children and create space for that, and to start a business and follow a creative calling and a passion, which led to us starting the photography business. So as I look back at all these steps and all this journey, I think, man, just following the nudge and the calling from one step to the next sort of summarizes like, okay, who are we and who is Amber? And I'm on this constant journey of change and evolution and growth as we explore and transition from one season to the next. So from business owner to solo parenting to, leading a team to working with incredible clients. Those are the things that really excite me and light me up, as well as how can we multiply our results without working harder and without spinning our wheels. So, just to add some color to that as we think about the conversation and my journey.
Nice, nice. Well, thank you for that. And just from an audience perspective, like Amber is from the US in the Midwest, but is now traveling all over the world for, her family is enabling her to experience and better understand multiple cultures, and have a nice broad scope of how the world actually works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So oh, sorry, go ahead, Amber.
It's such a beautiful thing. You're hitting on something really special there, I think, is this opportunity that we have through my husband's job. His job is actually the one that takes us to different locations, but we've designed our lifestyle and my businesses and what I do in a way that I can also sort of pick up and go anywhere. So I think the kids would say it's, yes, a blessing, but also sometimes really stinking annoying as they leave friends and they transition. But it is such a special thing to learn and see all of these different cultures and to have this opportunity to experience that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and on the kids front, having been one of those kids who had to move a lot as a young person, when you get older, you see the value in how that helps you be able to pivot, how to be agile, how to make connections no matter where you are in the world. And it's also quite nice to be able to go anywhere in the world and have friends there, right? And you stay in touch and you cultivate those relationships, consistently. And they're probably young now and don't appreciate the importance and the value that that will actually bring to their lives. Yeah. As parents,
Yeah.
it's a great way to expose your kids early on to being able to adapt to change.
Yeah, that's the bet we're making. So I love to hear it.
Well, I think it's a good bet. So let's jump in and talk about, one of the things that struck me as really important when I was looking at your profile and, doing a little bit of research on you. It's it takes a lot of courage to pack up, pick up, evolve, you know, try something different, something new. And so as you have made moves and created different businesses, what are some of those biggest challenges that you see for women in particular? Because men have their own set of challenges, but today I really want to talk about how women are facing and navigating some of these challenges, and especially toward their careers.
Yeah, this is such an interesting conversation. For me, I mentioned I was going through a transition right now. And the transition I'm going through in this very moment as we speak is that my husband not going to be living with us for the next year
Oh,
because he's
wow.
going to do what we call an unaccompanied project away. So we're staying here in West Africa, which is such a gift because we have that stability and that consistency. But he will be gone. So I'm looking at and I'm thinking about so many things like that. Maybe you've heard this term before, but the invisible workload that women
Mm-hmm. Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
carry. Yeah, and that we carry like, oh, we're just doing it, we're just doing it, and it's these extra thoughts that we have and those things that we just naturally pick up. But it's magnified for me right now because I am hearing the word mom exclusively. There's no dad. Even if they said mom more before, I'm hearing mom extra now because I am the only one. So every moment, but it has me reflecting a lot on what we carry. And for a long time in my career, I was like, no, it's just the way it is. We've just got this. We just carry it. We just do it. And I think that's still true. We just do it. We just make things happen. And I think some of that adaptability, that flexibility, that ability to just keep on is absolutely a strength that we as women have and that I leverage as we're picking up and moving, as we're transitioning business strategies, as things feel like they are going not good places. And they're not going well. Okay, we adapt, we carry it. But then on the flip side, as you're in spaces like this, we're like, oh, now I feel a bit of that extra weight. It just comes to the surface of how much we carry. And I think so balancing that, yes, leveraging our strengths of adaptability and being able to
Mhm.
carry a lot and just roll with it, with creating that space for renewal and reflection and quiet. And, so balancing, striking that balance, I think is one of the biggest gifts and one of the biggest things that has allowed me to do all of these things
Mhm.
and do it without completely breaking down. Now, have there been interim breakdowns? Yeah, absolutely. But without
That
a
would be
complete,
life.
like, oh my gosh, can't do it. I'm out. Like we keep going forward through that and it moves us forward. But I think, and I do use the word balance. I know sometimes that's a challenging word and people, oh, there is no balance. But I continually feel like, no, I'm striking a balance. It doesn't look the same every day. It doesn't, I'm not doing all of the things to strike that balance in every moment. But over time and over days, there is a certain harmony and a balance that we do strike.
Nice.
So I said a lot there, Vicky, but I hope that makes sense.
No, no, it does. It does. And as you were speaking about that, like, we have women who are single moms who have to live with this every single day. And, you know, their dads may not be in the picture for multiple reasons, but So it's this leveraging your strengths. Like, I think that's such an important aspect because we sometimes get caught up in the, oh my God, I can't take one more day. And that is normal. Like, that does happen. And so give yourself, some compassion and space for that. But also know that you do have those strengths, that you can navigate this, even when it's hard. And so knowing those strengths, knowing how to tap into that. So you mentioned that adaptability, being able to look at it and say, how am I balancing? Maybe today I'm not balancing everything, but what are other strengths, Amber, that you're tapping into consistently just to help you navigate these transitions and these ups and downs?
Yeah. Oh, Vicky, what a cool question. Because I think that looking at our strengths is so essential, and there are many ways we can go about it. One that Strength Finders helped me identify was achiever. So this idea that let's go. My friends will joke with me. We'll be sitting at coffee, and we'll be talking about a place we want to go. And they're like, huh, here, we're sitting here talking about it. And Amber's thinking, why are we still sitting here? Why don't we
Yeah,
just
yeah,
go?
let's get it
Right. So
done.
I'm like, it's go time. Let's go. So this is absolutely a strength that comes into play here. Like, okay, we're talking about moving to our next location. Are we there yet? Like, I'm ready. So, but I have to balance that with like right on time, everything's
Mm.
happening, not wanting to rush things. So that's actually something I've, on the contrary, had to practice to keep that balance. But
Mm.
achiever, the adaptability, I'd say one of the other key things that comes up is optimism. And
Mm.
that is now quite natural for me. I can't say if it always was, but I've always studied positive psychology, and I know that optimism is something that
Oh,
can
it's
be
huge.
built. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that it is something that if that's something someone's like, oh, I don't have that, I would say start flexing that muscle, because the research on the vast number of ways that it helps us navigate challenging times is off the charts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
yeah, those come to mind as the top. And I'd say if there were a next ranking, it is a core value of family. But
Mm.
that's not only family in the sense of people who live with me or, my blood, but it's building familial support networks
Hmm.
wherever we are. Like
Yeah.
people here, my husband just recently left. They're reaching out, they're connecting. I feel like I got family all over. I treat my clients like family. So when
Mm.
things come up, we're there for each other. So that would be another key value slash strength that I lean into.
Nice, nice. Well, and I think the strengths piece is so important. I happen to use strengths finders myself
Yeah.
quite often with clients and even for myself. I mean, I remember years ago, one of the boards I sat on, the chairman said to me, "Oh, Vicky, you're such a wooer," and I was like, "What?" I was like, "Is he like is that a compliment or is that not a compliment?" So I had to do some research, and I was like, "Kevin, what are you talking about? What is a wooer?" And he really helped me bring my number one strength, which is a wooer. And I was like, I don't even know what that means, but it's somebody who's a deep connector, and you'll go take all the people that you don't know first and meet them. And so I was like, I do that. Yeah, I do that. And so I've been able for the last 20 years really play on that strength, to your point, where you were talking about your achiever strength. The one thing though with strengths is there's always a shadow side.
Yeah,
Do we
yeah, yeah.
overplay it? Do we underplay it? So, but knowing your strengths can really help you to navigate those
Mhm.
challenging times. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's really awesome.
Yeah, Vicky, you just reminded me of something as we think about that balance. I serve on a board right now, and I was speaking to one of the board members, and she was asking me about my strengths and my weaknesses and what I saw. And I said, I think one of the strengths that I bring is collaboration. But I could
Nice.
see where in certain situations this is going to be a weakness for our specific situation. And I was speaking with her last night, and she said, I know you called out some of your strengths and weaknesses, but she said, I think one of your weaknesses is too fair play, too fair play. Sometimes we just
Mm.
got to go. Like you just got to call it and you got to go. So we do have to understand. And that really stood out to me. I'm like, you're right. I needed to hear that. I need to see that. And it's such a gift when people can play those things back to us and
Oh yeah.
reveal something new. So that's
Yes.
cool. I could see you as a wooer. I like
Yeah,
this.
I'm definitely a wooer. Achiever's actually one of mine as well, because I'm similar to you in that respect that it's like, why are we still talking about it? Let's just get it done.
Let's go.
Yeah. Love that. Love it. Love it. So how do you see, or how have you developed this mindset of knowing where you are is exactly where you're meant to be? And I know you relate to this because so many people will be like, oh my gosh, like why is this happening? Or, I mean, you could have easily said, oh my gosh, I've just moved my family to the other side of the world and my husband's off for a year and I'm here by myself with the kids. So what are some of the practices that you use to really enhance that mindset?
Oh my gosh, I love this because for as long as I can remember, I've heard from people, I've heard from family. I've sort of had this message of it's all working out. Like it's going to be fine. You're exactly where you're meant to be. I'm like, wow, it doesn't work for me. This isn't where I want to be. And I really struggled against that. And
Okay.
I started saying to my clients, they'd show up late to a meeting and they'd say, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, it's all good. You're right on time. And I realized after a couple of years of sharing this message and this idea with my clients, I wasn't practicing that myself.
Mm.
I am impatient. I'm an achiever. Let's go. Why aren't we there yet? So I started to rethink this. And Vicky, we were sitting on the floor in a temporary apartment between move locations. And my toddler at the time, our youngest, was having a full-on temper tantrum. And my husband said, this is loud. This is really loud. I'm worried someone's going to call the police. And we were in an apartment and I was like, you know what? If they call the police, they call the police. And I was thinking to myself, this is right on time. This
Mm.
is your opportunity. You asked for these moments to practice patience and surrender and know you're exactly where you're meant to be. And one of the things I did in that moment and I have multiple steps that we take to practice this, but in that particular moment, I sat on the floor with my very loud, out of control, emotional toddler. She just couldn't grasp what was happening in her sweet little body. And she needed a moment. And she wasn't ready for me to hug her. She wasn't ready for me to
Mm.
do what I wanted to do as a mom. And I just sat there and said, when you're ready, I am here. And eventually she crawled on over. But it's this idea of, man, there's something I don't necessarily want to be happening right now, but
Mhm.
something is unfolding, right? In that situation, she's learning, she's processing, she needs to know there's support, but she doesn't need me to force that on her. And in every moment when something comes up, one of the first things I do is pause, right? In that moment, what do we need to do? But if I can't specifically identify the action or what's going to fix it, or I can't answer it right away, I tend to shift my body. So whether that's getting up and walking or moving, but also physically arms wide open,
Mm.
because so often, right, basic, we know this as leaders in nonverbal communication skills, right? You cross your arms, it could mean you're cold, but it could also be a sign that like, oh, I'm not here for this right now. And so we close off our bodies to so much possibility. So sometimes I will just open wide up, like, whoa, I'm feeling things. I don't know what this is right now. I don't have the answers, but I literally just open my arms and walk, or I'll sit here or I'll stand. So I'll physically start to shift my energy so that I can tap into something different. And the answers don't always come right away, but they start to reveal themselves when I disconnect from the control that I'm trying to have
Love
and
that.
just allow possibility to unfold.
Love that.
And I have so many examples. I could go on and on, from losing suitcases to moving 15 times in a year to like getting signs from the porter at the airport that you're going to the right place. I mean, there's so much there when you open up to the possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. When you open, you can actually see and hear, right?
Oh,
When you
yeah.
close, it can't happen. It
Yeah.
creates, yeah. That I love that you shared that. And so I am going to shift our gears just a little bit here because I know our audience is sitting here saying, okay, but tell me about how do I clone myself? How do I do less? So, I mean, that's a big one for all of us, right? Like, I think especially since we've come back after the pandemic,
Mhm.
I feel it myself too. I feel like the world is accelerating so fast. And so it's like, how do we feel like that we're getting more done
Mhm.
by doing less?
Yeah, this is such a great question. And I agree. Things have accelerated. Like we came out of a forced restful season, good
Mhm.
or bad. So much was happening for so many people in that. But then we came out and we were like sprinting. It was immediately, okay, we're off. And it accelerated. But Vicky, I think it only continues to accelerate with advances in technology and
100%.
right, the global climate. So there's just a lot happening at a very fast pace. And I think the first thing we have to do is decide where we're going to play and
Mm.
where we're not, right? As leaders, as parents, as family members, as friends. And so one of those things that immediately comes to mind is going back to your core values. And
Mm.
I've got to bet as we look at the plethora of things that we have on our to-do list, the average person has more than 40 hours of work on their to-do list at any time.
Mm.
And leaders, business owners, right? I bet you look at your to-do list right now, and there's a lot more than 40 hours of work. So how do we start to dial that back? What do we actually need to do? So the first thing I look at is, are the things that are on that to-do list actually values aligned? If
Mm.
not, let's start to parse it out. The second thing I look at is like we scale it. And I look at sort of those things that are values aligned as $100 bills. And then we go right on down to the $1 and the $5
Oh,
bill.
love that. That's a good,
Yeah.
good metaphor. Yes.
Yeah, like get rid of them. If it's a $1 or a $5 bill, goodbye. And then as we very practically look at the to-do list, there are things that have been sitting on there for days, weeks, maybe months. And at some point, does it really matter? Or is it just taking up mental clutter and space on our to-do list? And if it's been sitting there, I'd really ask myself, do I need to just do this? Do I need to delegate it? Because yeah, it does need to get done. Or do I delete it? The triple D, do it, delegate it, delete it. And then, of course, as we think about delegation, as we think about automation, there are systems that can be put in place to support us in cloning ourselves. And there is certainly team building that can be done, team development, team building to support us in certain areas as well. But I'd say that's like next level. First, just look what's on our plate, and does it really matter? And
Mm.
make some
I
hard
love that.
decisions around what should be there and what should not. And of course, that is a leadership challenge. We've got to be able to make those hard decisions about our priorities.
Well, I love how you just described that. And I love do it, delegate it, delete it. I mean, that, like when you think of it, so to our audience, any of you, whether you're a mom staying at home, whether you're in your, professional capacity, you're an entrepreneur, whatever, create a sticky note, put it on your computer, put it on your desk, do it, delegate it, delete it. Like that is so, so important to start to look at. And I think there's this element, and that's why I brought up the mindset earlier, right? And was asking you like how you developed this mindset, because so often what I see anyway is we will have guilt, shame, all of these belief systems that play into, well, I can't really delete that, or I can't delegate that because Vicky has too much on her plate already. And so we go through these stories that we create, right? And I love the analogy you used with the $100. So what has $100 value? What has a dollar value? So let's just dive into that a little bit. Like, what do you see, Amber? Like, where are the pitfalls when you're trying to help people align those values?
Yeah, I love that example you just gave, Vicky, around, so and so has got too much on their plate already. I can't
Mhm.
give that to them. What did we just do? We just made an assumption for someone else, right? And I know as it's happening, right? We just made an assumption that they're too busy for this. And what we're doing is we're projecting, I'm too busy for this, or this isn't in my zone of genius, or I'm ignoring. So have the conversation. And part of that coming back to family values and thinking through, what do you value? As a leader, one of the things I value is some of that control that I was talking about, having some control over things. And when people take that away, the thing that they said Amber was too busy on might be exactly the thing that is in my zone of genius that, yeah, that's $100 bill for me. So I go back to, okay, as a family, we're going to have a conversation about these things and we're going to pre-plan, we're going to be proactive. And I'm not going to decide things for you, even with my kids, right? Of course, yes, there are some things we decide for them, but more often it's a dialogue and it's a conversation. So what do you value? Do you value conversation? Do you value having autonomy and control? Do you value being considered for
Mhm.
opportunities, right? Allow that for other people as well. And then as we think about how values come into play, right? Okay, are we living in alignment with those values? So if you are nodding your head yes, as you listen to some of these values, do we operate in alignment with it? And I will tell you, Vicki, I regularly have to come back to it because
Sure.
there are times in my life where
Likewise.
I'm like, oh, family, number one value. Wait a second. But am I
Mm,
extending that to my clients? Am I
mm,
extending that to my family, or am I spending way too much time? Are we unbalanced right now? And I'm spending way more time in the business than I am with my family. Or maybe I need to give them a heads up that the business is going to be busy in this next season. And so here's what my time is going to look like. Can we talk about that? How can I support you? How can you support me? So really checking your values, defining them, putting them on paper. Don't just have them in your head, but put them on paper
absolutely.
for the team, for the family, for right for yourself, and then check yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are incredible. A few things I would expand on that
Yeah.
is, and I know for myself, like I spent 30 years in the retail industry. And one of the things that happened when I got out of alignment with my values is I started getting physical ailments, right? And
Yeah.
so for women in particular, because, and this is not, I mean, men do this too, but it is more prominent in women, is
Mhm.
that physicality of how it shows up because our bodies start talking and saying, here's a clue, Amber. How
Ah.
is it making you feel? And we tend to push that away. And so I think that becomes a really important part that you're reflecting, you're feeling what is my body saying when I do this. So I think
Mhm.
that's a really important one. And then something else you said that I want to highlight, I think is so important, is when you make assumptions that somebody else is too busy, you may actually be taking a gift away from them. So I wanted to amplify what you said there, right? Because if you're not asking, like if I just made the assumption, Amber can't handle this right now, her schedule's too busy, but yet Amber's sitting over here saying, oh my gosh, why am I getting passed over for this opportunity? I've really wanted to work on that project. And why is nobody seeing me or asking me about it? Like, I think what you said there is so important as leaders that,
Mhm.
yeah, we're asking you to do a lot, but it's paying attention to those nuances, putting it out there. Is anybody interested? Right? Who's ready to take on this great opportunity, challenge, whatever, right?
Yeah. And even then, it gives the person the opportunity to say, I'm ready. And I'd have to reprioritize these things, right?
Yes.
I'm ready, but I would need this kind of support to be able to do this. Like, yeah, let's amplify, let's help each other move forward. Oh, so good,
Yeah.
Vicki.
Yeah. That was a really important one. So I am cognizant of our time. So I want to talk about a couple of things. So, earlier we talked about how do you do this with ease and grace, right?
Mm.
Especially, you know, finding that harmony with our families, our friends, our careers. Like we do have a lot of competing priorities. So how do you really tap into, being in a state of grace?
Oh my gosh. You said those words and I felt really light. And then I thought, oh, but it's sometimes also really messy.
Mm,
And then I thought of a practical step. So I'm going to share all three, but that idea
nice.
of ease and grace, when I think about this, I think about gifting yourself that grace. Like we give it away, we all the time, right? They're just busy. I don't want to bother. Like we're giving that grace, but gift it to yourself when you can. And for me, one of those examples was that right on time gift to my clients. But wait a
Mm,
second, are you practicing this? And then it's messy. It is messy. So practice giving yourself that grace, even when it's messy, even when you're crying, even when the business or the team, the project, the family is upset with like whatever. okay, we're going to get through this and we're going to reset and we're going to learn from it. So taking that breath, but to be able to give yourself grace and to take the breath without feeling extra stress, you've got to have margin in your days, weeks, months,
Love that.
years. So I very practically build that margin in way in advance. Now,
Nice.
can I take on more? Yes, because I have margin. I actually give myself more margin than I need. I recommend that people do not book their calendars up to 100%, but we bring it back at least to 80% and even 60% if we can. So we've got 20% to add in work as needed. Fires are going to come up, things are going to break down, but then you've got 20% to pause and reflect, to reset, and to think when things aren't going the way you want them to go. So that, yes, you're going to gift yourself grace, but you've also created the space for it. And so things can be a little bit more ease filled when it's not going well, when, right, okay, it's too much, but I have this time on Friday where I can figure all of this out. So I definitely think leaving in that margin is essential.
Yeah, 100% agree. So I'm going to play devil's advocate on that one because
Okay, bring
I
it.
love what you said, and I actually do what you just said. What about the person who says, I don't get to control my calendar? I work for X organization
Yeah,
and my calendar is open. And so anybody can book me at any time.
I
How would
love
you?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So a few things on this. This is the truth. This is the reality. So I'm not going to say, no, it's not possible. Or, you can absolutely can have some control in there somewhere. Because if it is your reality right now that, hey, no, they control my schedule, I have to be available anytime. Okay. This is the current reality. So I do two things. I look at, number one, what do you have control over? Is it your morning routine? Is it your afternoon, your evening, your weekends? Where can you find some margin to block that space, block that time, so you are not 24/7 booked up solid, so you don't have breathing room? And if your job is intense, maybe you're not just working 8-hour days. Maybe you are working 12-hour days, 6 days a week. You've got to find the margin. So you're going to have to get creative. You might have to wake up earlier than you want. And honestly, when I have busy weeks, I'm like, okay, I got to go to bed at 6 p.m. on Sunday night. I have to wind down early. It takes me a minute to unwind. Okay, you get in bed at 6 p.m. You're going to be asleep by maybe 8, so you can wake up extra early to get the run in because you're trying to run. I'm not a very good runner, but I'm trying, right? So if there was a week where I was jam-packed, I'm like, where am I going to fit this? This is really a priority for me. So where can you take control? The second thing, the second offshoot is I would start collecting and where it makes sense, depending on the organization you're in, the team you're in, the dynamics, I'd start to look for opportunities to introduce the research on margin, right? There is research that supports when we have a little margin, we can do a better job. When we have time to reflect as a team and individually, our team members are happier, companies are happier, and those teams that have time to reflect perform better. So, okay, start educating, start building that in. Some companies that I work with also have no meeting hours, right? This is our no meeting time. So we can just get some work done. So we can have that because we're pulled in every single which direction. Dopamine hits all over the place. So you got to carve out that time. So a couple of different strategies based on the situation. Vicky, devil's advocate, what do we think?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I would say the other thing that I did, because I actually worked for an organization for a couple of years that it was complete open. That did not work for me.
Yeah.
But I would go in and block my own times as if I was having meetings, that my meetings were with me.
Yeah.
Right. And so nobody needs to know what your meetings are with, but you're blocked for a meeting. And that becomes your creative time, because I totally agree with you that if you don't have that headspace, you will not have the productivity, you will not have the engagement, because you can only be full on and present for so much time. So it goes back to your 60%, right? So you have that 40% margin built in, and that is something you do have control over.
Yeah.
If then somebody comes in and says, I need to have this meeting, then you get to choose, right? Because
Mhm.
to your point, you might say, oh, you know what? I don't have time today, but I could meet with you on Friday, or I could meet with you next Monday, right? But it's you honoring what you need without guilt and shame.
Yeah.
Because that's the other part that kicks in. It's like, oh, I should have met with that person, or I should have been there. And it's like, you're not saying no, you're just saying not right now,
Not
right?
right now.
So
And it's
honor yourself for that.
honor that. And so oftentimes, what I find in those situations where you honor that space, it's actually a more productive meeting because the
100%.
person brings more information. Things have evolved a little bit. So you can actually add the value that you want to add versus being a part of a fire drill.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, 100%. So I am cognizant of time because I mean, this we could go on and on about this. Just, for our audience's purposes, what would be at least one thing you would want them to be able to walk away with today and they could start to implement that today?
Okay, number one thing that came to mind. So, this is for someone who's listening right now. The number one thing that came to mind is block those spaces a couple weeks, a month, a quarter, a year in advance. So you may want a weekly touch point with yourself. I actually do them on Monday and Friday just to get grounded. A
Likewise.
monthly game plan. What am I doing this month? So then every week it cascades through, as well as a 90-minute quarterly block. I do some semi-annual planning in there as well. That's a little bit longer. That may or may not be necessary. And your vacations. Put that holiday
Oh,
time.
yes.
Put the personal stuff on the calendar well in advance and give yourself a couple of days buffer before you're actually out so that you're not scrambling and running the race right to the end before you're out of office or on holiday. So block that in your time now, and a year from now, you are going to be so dang happy you did.
Yes, 100%. And just to add one more thing to that, Amber, because what you just said about not running to the very end to the race, but also when you come back from vacation, that first day or two, no meetings, block yourself as much as possible so that you have time to catch up. Because how awful is it to go away? And then let's say if you do Friday to a Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, you're going, oh my God, I have to catch up on the 800 emails that I've missed or the request of me. And so you're still on vacation. So take that vacation. Yeah. Beautiful. I love those examples. So Amber, how can people find you? I know you're on LinkedIn, but are you on Instagram, Facebook? Like where can they find you?
All of the above.
Nice.
AmberMcHugh.com is sort of the hub and the home, but I'm also on Facebook, Amber McHugh, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, it's been such a delight having you here. We appreciate you dialing in from West Africa, and keep rocking it and balancing and finding, your groove wherever you are in the world. And feel good that what you're doing for your kids is you're giving them a gift today that they will certainly appreciate when they're at our age.
Oh, Vicki, thank you
Yeah.
so much. This was an absolute pleasure.
Oh, it's great having you here. And audience, I want to thank you. We know you have a choice as to what podcast you listen to. There's so many options. So we're grateful that you continue to chime in on the We'll Talk podcast. And just one last thing I'll leave you with as well. If you're interested in boosting your leadership skills, in October, we are going to start a new cohort for enhancing those power skills. So check us out at willempowered.com. That's 1L. WIL, Will Empowered, and just see if that's a right fit for you. We'd love to have you join our cohort and just really push your leadership potential. So thank you again for being here today, and take care of everyone. And we'll see you at the next We'll Talk podcast.